All right, so here we are, and I'm going to spend some time answering all these questions that came in last week when we posted this on Facebook. So thank you all for responding and being excited, and thanks for all the compliments within these questions. It's really quite amazing to be able to give back a bit, and also inspiring, you guys who again inspire me to do better. So it's a beautiful sort of circle of inspiration. So I will do my best to answer all these questions throughout this next half hour or so. First question is from Linda van Roosmalen, and I hope I didn't slaughter that name, but I did my best. Thank you foremost for being a tremendous inspiration to me in my creative endeavors. Like everyone else, I would love personal mentorship from you. If that isn't possible, one question I would love to know the answer to is, where does your tremendous patience come from, and where do you center yourself when you feel burned out? Also, there's 3 questions there, and the first one, which a lot of people have been asking, is internship. And the only thing I can say to the internship part is really to contact my studio manager, and you will find her information on my website. I have not taken a lot of internships in the past, and the reason is that I feel like I sort of need to give back a little bit to someone that comes to have an internship. And with more than 200 days of travel a year, it's hard to sort of be at one place or in the studio to give back that effort that's being put in. So I've been very reluctant through actually the past 5-6 years to take on any sort of internships. We have started recently, and that all went through my studio manager. I was not involved with that at all. So email Phyllis at erikalmas.com with a resume, and she might be able to help you out. Now, where my patience come from, it's a good question, because I don't feel I have any. I do think that's my, both my largest sort of flaw, but also my biggest asset, that I am impatient. I try though, I'm aware of it, that I am impatient, and I try to be focused on the things that matter and worry less about the things that don't. So if you see me have sort of a calmer presence, it's really focusing on the things that I find need to get done, what I think is important for me and my pictures. Those things I'm really passionate about, those things I'm really impatient of, and that's my craft. But when it comes sort of to all the stuff around it, I try to remind myself that it is only pictures. I'm not a doctor or a surgeon, and it's not life or death what we're doing. It's really just creating imagery. So that's the balance I try to seek. Now, when it comes to center myself being burned out, it's really taken time away from pictures in some ways, and then it's to exercise. I think my best ideas happen when I run or do other things. You don't come up with one great idea if you're taking another picture or doing another idea, because then you're focused on that one thing. So if you find yourself so immersed in it that you don't have any new ideas, you got to do other things. And through that, the urge of creating will surface again, and with that, comes pictures. So time away, I think, from photography would be the biggest inspiration. Input equals output. So if you want to produce and give of yourself, you also got to nourish yourself, either through exercise or other imagery. So keep that in mind. Input equals output when it comes to creative work. Tobias Letterer writes, do you need an assistant from Germany with huge experience? And Tobias, I would just have to say, no, I have good assistants in San Francisco. So right now I don't need one in Germany. If you come to the US, knock on my door again, but for now, we don't need one from Germany. Sorry. When it comes to assisting in general, I had someone on staff, and I asked for a 2-year commitment there. So every 2 years, we'll look for someone, and we'll make sure to announce that on Facebook next time that happens. So for now, there's no openings when it comes to assistants. Martin Bonden, he writes, first of all, thank you, Erik. You are a true inspiration to me. And thank you, Martin, for that. How is your process from idea to product? What would you say is the top 5 most important things to do when it comes to planning and creating an image? So there's different ways to come up with an idea or approach a picture, right? A lot of the stuff you see on my website It's actually coming from creatives at advertising agencies. They come up with the ideas, and I lend my aesthetic, my eye, my sensibilities to that idea. So sometimes it's not mine whatsoever. I'm just being involved in the project and help execute. For my own imagery and my personal work, I start with a feeling, an idea, or a place. And in the DVD, I talk about these different approaches to picture making. Yeah, some is driven by a place, which my work often is, where you come upon a place and say, this is such a cool location, I got to shoot something here. It being a car or a person or a group of people or just a landscape, right? From a place, you get inspired and you add a concept or a story to that place. Sometimes you start with a concept. You want to shoot something that's, you know, something you're passionate about. Let's say love. I want to shoot love and people in love and places that shows that affection, or animals, whatever that is. And you start with an idea. And some photographers are curious about people. Then there's the portrait, you know, then there's the person that drives the sort of the picture and the idea around it. So you say, I'm going to shoot a portrait of, I don't know, let's say Annie Leibovitz, another photographer. Shoot her with the camera, shoot her in the studio, find a location that she often uses, you know, and then around the person, you build the picture. So I think there's 3 ways to come to photography. Through the person or the subject or object you want to photograph, the landscape, the place, or just the idea in general. A 4th one that we mentioned in the DVD is sort of like a project, an umbrella sort of thing. You say, I'm going to photograph everything in a certain neighborhood that spans tons of ideas or tons of things. I'm a photojournalist and I'm going to shoot this, you know, tennis club, or, you know, shoot all the landscapes and people and all the things that describe a certain society or thing or place, or, you know, make it an event. Is it a concert? Then you don't just shoot one band, you shoot all the bands, the people, the atmosphere, everything around it. So find what that thing is for you, what you're most drawn to, and start there. Say, I'm drawn to places. I'm going to pick 10 places. I'm going to find what happened in those places. I'm going to find the atmosphere that describes that place the best, and then pictures will come forth from that. The question was, how is your process from idea to product? So that's where it starts, and you sort of build on it. And I think in that question, or in that first description, I sort of described that process. What's most important in those 5 is very different for me than it is for you. So you just got to find what's important to you and what you relate to most in pictures, and then the ideas and the process of creating these pictures will happen. Of course, a separate layer to this is the post-process. So that's another important one, where you really infuse the finishing touches. Oh, have you felt and have you saw the image in the first place? All right, Denise Dalton. She's a good friend and a client of mine. She writes, not only an amazing photographer that I have had the honor to work with, but Erik treats his clients extremely well too, and really takes the time to understand what we're trying to accomplish. So I'm glad she put that comment in there, because I find that to be one of the most important things about being a commercial photographer. I get a lot of questions about how I infuse my vision into the client's vision. And for me, it's really to have first a strong aesthetic, which I feel I have through all my work. And then when clients come to me, they come to me because they enjoy that aesthetic. So for me then, it's just to really understand what they are trying to say with the pictures. And when I understand what they want to communicate, I apply myself and my aesthetic and my sort of vision to that concept that they're bringing to me. So thanks for that, Denise. And I think it's a good reminder for everyone else out there wanting to be a commercial photographer to keep those things in mind. Janne Amelie, she writes in Norwegian, she says, impressive work, congratulations. How did you get to where you are today, and what do you think is the main reason? I think there's 2 main reasons, really. There's the drive and ambition to wanting to get there. I think if you say, I just want to be a photographer, you could be a photographer at so many different levels, but if you decide for yourself that I'm going to be a successful photographer, traveling and getting to see different places and meeting different people and shooting high quality work that can really stand, you know, against some of the work that I admire myself, then that's a very specific goal. And if you work hard enough, you will attain that. So I would say it's those two things. Set a goal of a specific goal, or what you want to accomplish, and then be relentless, really relentless in the pursuit of that goal. You know, you got to find clarity, I think, in your life. And you can't say, I want to be a photographer, but then go out, you know, and party or do other things. You know, you got to streamline and find what's most important to you. Is it the satisfaction of that day or that week or that weekend, or, you know, that sort of time with friends? Or is it a greater satisfaction in reaching a goal further down the road? So you got to find what that balance is and stick to it. Hedda Rystad, she's also from Norway, she writes, how was the school that you attended, and do you always use external light sources, or do you sometimes use natural light with reflectors? And it's absolutely both. I think I'm way more drawn to natural light than anything else. I find it the rarer occasion that I use strobes. My two main lighting tools really is two scrim gems with a silk and a white reflector on it. And with those two tools, I'd shoot natural light all day. Sometimes you're inside, or you want to create an evening atmosphere outside, or the client maybe want to look, or I want a stronger look to the image where you want it to be crisper and harder, and then you use external light sources like strobes. It's almost the wrong end of the question, right? First you ask yourself, what feel do you want the picture to have? And when you know what that feel is, you apply the sources you have at your disposal to achieve that. So my aesthetic is definitely more romantic and softer. So I use soft light sources usually, and that's most of the time natural light when the sun has gotten lower to the horizon, when it is softer, and then I infuse some reflector into that to sort of bounce light back into the subject. So that was that second part of it. The school I attended was Academy of Art University, and I had a great experience there. School isn't for everyone, so it's hard for me to say, oh, you should go to school. I had an amazing sort of structure there with teachers that was really quite amazing. So I was grateful for the 4 years that I spent at the Academy of Art University, achieving a Bachelor of Photography. But I mean, a lot of my heroes never went to school, and a lot of people that I work with, my peers, never went to school. So there's so much information and so much learning now, online, as you can achieve as an assistant. There's so many sources and places to learn from. School is just one of those. Ace Paul writes, where can I get an astronaut suit? And I guess that comes from this shoot that we just did, getting a guy on the moon. And it's fairly simple if you're close to Los Angeles. You just call a prop house and you say, I want an astronaut suit. And they will guide you to one of the 3 companies in Los Angeles that specialize in making these astronaut suits. So if you're in California, that's where to get them. I'm sure you can get them elsewhere as well, but it's really easy if you're in the US. It's a cost to rent it, and they could ship it to you. And you can just put that on your model. Done. Yoppie Johannes writes, good day, Erik. I watched your DVD and totally inspired by them. The way you help us find our original style is really helpful, and I'm thanks to that. So thank you for that, truly. From your photos, I find that a lot of your photos are composites. I mean, you shoot the object and the landscape in different time and location. The question is, how do you match color between them? Because you know usually sunlight and studio light have different color tone. I have tried it for several times, but the result always annoying. It's difficult to make it look stunning. Can you share the trick and the tip to match the color between object and landscape? All right, so there's not really a trick to it. What you got to know is that there's different color temperatures throughout the time of day. So if you're going to have a highlight that's a cooler tone, that's daylight balance, then you use the strobe as it is. But if the sun is setting and you have a warmer tone, then you got to put a warming gel on your strobe to match those two sources. What I find also is very different is that the fill light that you try to establish using artificial light never really feels the same way as the fill light that you have outside. So as you've seen in some of my behind the scenes, I often prefer actually to shoot my composite pieces in the same environment and same light as the original piece. So if you see this behind the scenes with the lion, we have an exterior background. Instead of shooting the girl on the couch inside, I actually choose to shoot it outside. We do use light modifiers within that. An overhead sort of silk, there's a strobe on the side, and that is to subtly help the ambient light that's already there. But I try to work with similar sources. So if you're going to do a composite, why use strobes if the background is in the sun? Just put the person, the subject, in the same light scenario, you know, on the rooftop or on the street or something that relates. And in the DVD you saw me shooting a person right outside my office, so you can easily do it that way. I think you don't need strobes and studios to do a matchup. Except from that, it's just a trial and error, really. You fine-tune that stuff in Photoshop, and you can manage to balance different light sources in Photoshop by doing color. And I think that's just practice. Practicing, you know, what tone there is in the highlights, what tone there is in the shadows. You can say overall, you know, that this is too red, and then you opposite that with some cyan color, but it might be, you know, then too cyan in the shadows and still too red in the highlights. So you've got to adjust those separately. Hope that answered that question. All right. Liam Lavery, he says, "Hi Erik, I will start off with my question now. Do you ever get a creative block? Like points where you just feel as though your mind is blank? And if so, where do you draw your inspiration from?" I think I answered that in the first question. The motivation is this. You always want to create new things, right? You don't take 10 pictures and you stop creating. As photographers, there's always an urge there to take new pictures and to create art in some ways or express yourself. Or, I mean, there's a reason that we're attracted to this medium. So if I'm at a point where I'm sick of photography and stuff, I know that that urge is going to come back. So then I enjoy that time off and do different things. That's really it. And then you get inspired. You got to be inspired by everything, really. The obvious one is other art, books, museums. But as a photographer, you should learn to observe. I mean, I stare at people whenever I'm out to dinner with friends or my girlfriend, whatever it is. I get distracted by looking at all the people and other places, and I just get inspiration from everywhere. So as a photographer, you don't stop looking when you put your camera away. You look all the time. So look all the time, and then if you don't feel creative for a week, you know, you keep just looking, and you will come across something that inspires you, that spurs a picture. All right, there's a sub-question here. Let me see. There's another question about internship, which I feel like I've answered. If you ever do anything in Australia, I would be there in a heartbeat. So thanks for that. If I'm coming to Australia, I'll come knocking on your door. Let me see. Andreas Fruity, I think that's Fruity, maybe. Sorry about that pronunciation. He says, "Love your work. Thank you. How do you find that great landscape for your backgrounds? Do you scout them by yourselves or do you hire location scouts? What technique do you use taking your panoramas? Do you use a special adapter? Thank you, and keep making these great pictures." So when it comes to locations, it totally depends on if it's assignment or if it's for myself. I never really use location scouts for my own work. As I said, I'm often inspired by places, so usually I come across a place and I say, oh my God, I got to come back here and shoot. Or I have an idea and we find that place through searches on the internet. The location scouts are really for commercial assignments. When they come to me with an idea and they say, what's the best place to execute this idea? We then ask these scouts, and they either come back to us with ideas or file pulls from images they already have and places they've scouted, or they go out and scout again. So that's truly for a commercial application using scouts. I don't really use scouts for my own work. Unless there's a very specific idea that we want to execute. I took this picture of a girl coming down the staircase, and then we called scouts in San Francisco and LA and said we're looking for this very special staircase. In the end, we ended up making it CGI, but there's occasions where you go out and ask people for help. The second question, what technique do you use taking your panoramas? And there's not really a technique, but for stitching plates together. So I'm really drawn to volume in my pictures, yeah? So you could do that by using a really wide angle lens, but then things get so distorted. You get, you know, the things in the back is really tiny and the things in front really big. So the lenses that I love to shoot with is in between 28 and 35 millimeter. Almost, not all, but most pictures live within that focal range. And then I take a picture here and swing the camera left or right and take another one, and I stitch the two together, and that way I get a panorama. As I talk about in the DVD, I never really used the stitching software to put those two pieces together, because the stitching software will completely distort the frame and sort of undo that volume that you just created by shooting two frames stuck together. You want to keep some of that perspective this way and perspective that way, and when that meet, you have a volume to the frame. So don't undo that in Photoshop. Stitch it together by hand. Find the small places where you can sort of work your way through the middle of the frame and stitch those two together. So the question is, no, I do not use a special adapter for anything. I just shoot left and right and put it together. Victor Fayas asks, how do you become represented by Von Hannigan? And it's really a question for them, more so to me. I had representation by a company called Tidepool, and it was truly a commercial agency, a smaller one, and I wanted to take it more to the editorial world, and I looked for an agent that was not only shooting editorial and fashion and beauty, but had a presence in the editorial market and also did advertising, which is sort of the market that I'm in. So I looked for someone that had that balance, didn't have too many photographers, it was a smaller group, and that gave me a list of just a couple of agencies, and Von Hannigan were the ones that I signed with. So I think there's two things to that, right? You gotta make yourself an attractive package, someone that people would want to represent, and then you gotta find someone that you think fit your vision of who you'd like to be represented by. So that's how I came about Von Hannigan. Gerardo Dominguez asks, I'm looking for an internship, can you take me in? And I feel we have answered that. Check out Phyllis at erikalmas.com. Heather Lacey says, I'm always amazed at the lighting in your photos. I've been really focused lately at paying attention to light everywhere, how it bounces and how it reflects. Do you have any tips for a newbie trying to learn how to capture such depth of light and shadows? How did you learn other than just time and practice? Are there certain things you keep in mind regarding light when compositing an image? Often my images, though properly exposed, just feel flat and boring. I want to learn how to make them grab the viewer and bring them into the scene, like getting captured by the words of a book. Now, that's an amazing and also lofty ambition. I wish I could take pictures that would grab you like reading a book, because books and words aspires the imagination. It really spurs, you know, all this sort of visual imagery in your mind, and it's a great source actually for inspiration to read visual books. You get so many words, no, so many pictures, you know, that comes through these words. So if you want to be inspired, read an amazing book. Man, that's tons of visuals there for you to capture. So back to creating volume with light. So you say here that you've been focused lately at paying attention to light everywhere, and that's the first step. You say you want to capture light with depth and shadows. Then in your observations of light, find when that is and where it is. Is it inside with, you know, light bulbs sort of casting long shadows, creating volume? Is it outside? And when do you seek that volume? I think there's two reasons for flat pictures. There's front light and long lenses. Long lenses flatten the perspective of pictures, and front light gives you zero shadows, so it really gives you flat perspective. And there's photographers that does and use this, you know, to their advantage, creating beautiful, beautiful imagery. It sounds like that's not your aesthetic. So if you're seeking volume, then I would first of all use a wider focal length. That will give you volume within the photograph when it comes to, you know, foreground, background, and middle ground. It will sort of create a bigger presence of things. And when it comes to volume of light, just find what that is. Side light creates shadows, which create volumes. Backlight also creates volume and shadows. So you want to look for light then that has highlights and shadows for you. And I would suggest going out at sunrise, going out at sunset, and then also at nighttime. All the street lights, you know, create pools and pockets of light that would create that sort of atmosphere and volume that it seems like you're looking for. Are there certain things you keep in mind regarding light when compositing an image? And of course there is. I mean, the basis for a composite is that the perspective and the light is the same in all the pieces that you put together. That's the only way to get a seamless composite. If you try to composite things that is shot at different times of day, it's going to not look right. So those are the two fundamental things. You have a light direction, you have a camera position, and you have a focal length. And all the pieces that you choose to composite has to follow those three elements. I talk a lot about that in the DVD, and when I retouch the pictures in those tutorials, that you establish what I call the unmovable part, the background plate. And when that background plate has a certain camera perspective and a certain light direction, you know what all the other pieces have to be. You start with that one plate, and then everything else will follow on top. Every other piece have to have the sun, you know, over to the right at that height from the horizon, taken from this height, you know, where their camera is, for instance. So just find what that immovable frame is, the background plate, and layer your composites on top, and you should have something that fits perfectly. Greg Anderson asks, have you gotten any better in wiffle ball? And Greg Anderson is a guy that I worked with years ago, and I used to carry around a wiffle ball bat and a wiffle ball in my bag, and at breaks between sunrise and sunset, we would pull that out and have some fun. And I have to say I have not gotten any better. So good question. All right, Hannes Honkanen, he asks, what is the best way to shoot replacement skies? That is a big element in your photography, isn't it? And yes, it is. You know, I grew up in Norway, and we have those big vistas. And with that come these big, amazing skies. And I think they're tremendously atmospheric. They lend a lot to the different pictures. And I just really love a beautiful sort of sky. Adds a great, great, great element to the pictures. Now, the best way to shoot skies is really to be there. You can't art direct skies. You can't tell them to do certain things. You can't really position them. So it's really about being there with a camera, capturing it when there is amazing skies in front of you. So I've been collecting skies in a sky library for must be 10 years now. And I draw from that library in every picture that I take. Again, it comes back to what I just said about finding the unmovable part. Where does the sun sit in that original frame? And then match the sun up exactly in the new sky that you want to put in. So that's really it. There's a little bit about perspective. You know, if you have a long lens image with a long focal length, you got to have a sky with that same compression as your landscape has. And if you shoot wide angle, the sky should have that wide angle feel as well. So just make sure to line up the sun with the sun on your landscape and give it that same sort of perspective and focal length. All right, Melissa Peterson, she asks, you're one of the first photographers I stumbled upon when I started trying to break into the business professionally, and your work has been an inspiration since then. So I got to ask, who were your photographers you looked up to, and what inspired you to get into photography in the first place? What's your go-to piece of equipment, and of course, Canon, Nikon, or other? All right, the last thing first maybe, Canon is what I shoot, and There was a couple of reasons early on in my career, and one of them was that the school that I attended, they had Canon gear that we could check out from the issue room, and I sort of got ingrained in it that way. Sports photographers often used Canon, and that's how I really started photography. I wanted to be a sports photographer. Now, just to go back to the gear for a minute, I'm not a gearhead, and I truly, truly, truly believe in my heart that content is king, and it would never be the gear, you know, that creates it. So I would encourage everyone to not focus on what camera and what lens. You got to just focus on content and light. So if you know what story you want to tell, you know what subject matter you want to photograph, then just find that light quality you want to tell that story in, and go and execute it. Now, you could do that with your iPhone, you could do that with any phone really, or do it with your Canon or Nikon. Extraordinary pictures every day on Instagram, mostly taken with the either iPhone or, you know, Samsung, whatever you have. So what I use shouldn't inspire you or intimidate you in any way. You know, it's all about content. What inspired me to get into photography in the first place is kind of a long story, but for me it was more of a decision of what I wanted to do, what was fun. And I had started taking ski pictures because that was one of my passions, and we started sort of doing the same stuff as the guy in the ski magazines, and I took pictures of my buddies on the slopes. Then after getting to a point where I thought, what do I do now? Photography just sounded like fun, and that's how I started pursuing it, and it became a lifelong passion for me. So I find in some ways that it was serendipitous, and in other ways I think that photography in some ways came and found me. As corny as that sounds, I feel like that's kind of the way it happened for me. The photographers that I look up to is many, and I feel that when I first started, internet wasn't around, and we all looked at books and magazines, and the pool of photographers that I really admired was smaller. It was, you know, sort of the Avedons and the Pence and the ones that was consistently in Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. Peter Lindbergh was one, and Gilles Ben-Simon, Elle was one that I loved. He had a really cool aesthetic in black and white, and I was excited for Elle to come out every month. But now the pool has gotten so much bigger. Now there's a tremendous amount of extraordinary photography that I see online every day. So now it's not so much one or two photographers, it's more like the collective photography conscious that inspires me, you know, every day. So many amazing sources. There's photographers that I never heard of that just blows me away, and I think, how could I not have heard of these people before? But the market has gotten so broad, such interest in photography. I just get inspired every day, you know. There's certain blogs I follow. There's, I would maybe start there. There's something called GoSee, GoSee.us, have an amazing amount of beautiful photography, mostly advertising driven. One Island is another one. Yeah, start with those two. I mean, there's photography blogs everywhere. There's the informational photography blogs too that occasionally post beautiful work. Bigger communities like Photography Talk, where they have groups where you could post your pictures, and there's so much stuff going on. It's hard to say who the sort of specific heroes are. If I'm going to list a few, I'm making long answers here. I got to like shorten this down. I would look at Anna Leibovitz for her composition and tone, just extraordinary. And people have opinions about Anna Leibovitz, but the amount of work that she produces is just extraordinary. If I could produce a third of what she does, I would be so excited. And she does it at such high level consistently. It's really just mind-blowing. So start with Annie, if you're attracted to the same aesthetic as I am. Richard Avedon and Irving Penn for people. If you want to connect with people, look at faces and the intensity that he managed to draw from his subject, amazing. I would look at Tim Walker for the whimsy, the creativity. I would look at, who else? That's three. Got to come up with a few more. I only got three for you. That's it. Moving on. Sebastian Boudot, he asks, how to manage family life with advertising photography. Big one, big one, big one. I just saw this really interesting documentary on chefs. And I have to say, chefs work harder than photographers do. The documentary is called 3 Stars. It's on Netflix if you want to see it. And they work, 18-hour days. Start early, prepping, being inspired, going to markets, finding fresh ingredients, educating themselves, and then they cook all night in the kitchen till it closes, So I think every passionate person has to find a partner, a life partner, that can encourage you in that passionate endeavor. I think when you get a family with kids, which I don't have yet, I've seen photographers truly get inspired by their kids, and in the time they spend with their family, they draw in inspiration, to create new work, and they shoot their kids. And I've seen photographers' work really change. They sort of mature and get other interests, and they reflect on life differently. So I would just, when it comes to family life, what I'd like to do when I get there is to not do one or the other, but choose for the family to inspire me, to continue fueling that creativity and keep on creating. So that was advice for a guy that has someone that I share my house with, but yet to be married and have kids. So for whatever that's worth from a non-family guy, there's my my hopeful answer to it. Rodrigo Delgado comes with some really flattering words, and I just want to say thank you. And he also asks about a mentorship in photography, and again I would refer to my first answer. So Rodrigo, thank you for your flattering words there. Cherise asks, have you ever or are you willing to use plus-size models in your work? Would love to see that in the future. And yes and yes, I'd love to shoot plus-size models. Irving Penn did a beautiful series of voluptuous nudes, and just recently Nadav Kander did a similar series of voluptuous nudes, and not only were they voluptuous, but they had a lot of them were redheads, and it was just absolutely stunning. Nadav Kander is another one that's truly inspirational, darker in sentiment that my work is, but man, what an extraordinary photographer. So there's beautiful inspirational photography with voluptuous models. Often voluptuous people are more self-conscious about their body and less likely to take their clothes off, and then there's the ones that's really proud of their bodies, that's excited to take their clothes off and say, oh, photograph me. So by default, of access, you get into the, I guess, more model type people, but my work is not about true beauty in that sense. I think my aesthetic is calmer and more poetic, and I think there's poeticness in voluptuousness for sure. Dennis Jockman asks, Erik, thanks for taking the opportunity to ask questions, and I hope they will help us all as photographers. Number 1, my pictures are inspired by your vision and technique. I like your style very much and feel very connected to it. In Spanish, your name is Almas, means souls, which is beauty, peace, and respect, which I want to transmit in my pictures as well. But I do not want to be a copycat, and I want to develop my own style. How do I use your technique without copying your style? And so there's another comment in this thread that I'll comment, and this is sort of part of that. I feel that you could copy my technique any day. And that's why I've been releasing this DVD, because I get all these questions that's sort of relating to how I do things. How I do things and how you do things could be exactly the same way technically, but aesthetically they should and will be different. Because you have to draw from yourself, right? If you set out to copy my work, you will never quite get there because you aren't me. You would need to find that voice within yourself, right? Find what you're connected to and apply that to your pictures. So with me showing you how I do my work, use that technique, you know, to the fullest. I'm happy for you to do so, but find your own viewpoint, find what you're drawn to, find your color palette, find your sort of voice, and if that's close to mine, then fine. I would just say that you should be very conscious of who you are and what you're drawn to, and if that aesthetic intersects, you know, with other artists, I think that's fine, you know. If you take one of my pictures and shoots exactly that, I think you use that as a learning experience, but I don't think that will fulfill you, you know, as an artist. It won't be gratifying to you to just copy someone else's work. It will be gratifying for you to listen to yourself and express something that's uniquely yours, something that goes on in your life now or happened to you in your life earlier, you know, just find what connects to you and then express that in your pictures. Use that as your subject matter. So use my work as inspiration if you want to start with and to practice. And when you get to a certain level, start listening to yourself and put that into the pictures. Number 2, before a session, I gather several ideas and draw them down, but to make them happen is not that easy. I suppose with practice, you can reach your goal. Sorry. Do you photograph in one session that could take a whole day for just one idea? And absolutely I do. You know, my old mentor used to say, it's all in the numbers. And I think there's a good lesson in that. You don't show up, take one picture and think that that's going to be it. You show up and you observe and you connect. And then through sort of exploring, something happens and that becomes a good picture. You never get a good picture, you know, the first time around. You get that by seeing and exploring. And if you thought that I did it on the first take, you know, it's not the thing. I spend a lot of time taking a picture. And when clients come to me and they say, oh, we want 10 pictures in a day, that's not the photographer that I am. You could be in a studio environment where the lights are set and only capture sort of different clothing and do 10 pictures a day, but for an outside image, the light quality for me happens within the last hour or so of the day. So within that hour, you can't capture a lot of different pictures. We spend the whole day practicing, setting up, finding composition, establishing the mood with the talent. And then when the light is right, we shoot sort of that picture. All the stuff that we prepared for come together. So yes, 1 or 2 pictures a day is what I do for my aesthetic. Grant Heaton asks, how do you estimate the retouch time and budget? And you know what, that's a really good question, because retouching can be so open-ended at times. I say, okay, here's all the elements, and here's the time I think it will take to put that together. And you do it within, let's say, 15 hours. That's you know, there's a lot of practice, you know, within the retouch, and I kind of know how long things would take. So if there's a person in a landscape with a cloud behind it, that's going to take 5 hours, for instance. If there's more elements, you know, it will expand. So let's say it's 15 hours to get one picture done. But then the client comes back and say, oh, change this. And then they come back again and say, oh, we want a different head on the person. He seems more relaxed there. We like the body language of this. And then it can go on and on and on and on. And if you have an indecisive client with an indecisive art director, suddenly you have a retouch budget that was for 15 hours that should be sufficient, that goes on and on and on and on. So it's not easy to set a retouch estimate. You really just got to set boundaries and say, for this picture and for this 15 hours, we're going to give you a person in a landscape with a sky and 4 hours of art direction on top of it. So they know that they have 4 hours to play with. And then beyond that, you would need to charge. With photography, the sun goes down and it's dark and your day is over. With retouch, it can go on for a long time and it is hard to estimate. I would just estimate as well as you can for the time and then say anything beyond this we have to charge for by the hour. So, another long answer to a short question. Let me see. Do you ever outsource any of your post work, or are you still doing it all yourself? If you ever need a hand, let me know. This comes from Nick Ledley, and Nick, I do a lot of the work on myself still, but what I do is to do what I call sort of the comp. So I find the selects, I put together the pieces that I'd like to have in there, and I add my cloud and the tone, the color tonality, and that's sort of it in the process for me now. That's what I feel is the creative part. It's really rough. It's, you know, the masks are perfect, and then I pass it on to a retoucher that can do two things for me. The first is to clean it up so that all the masks and everything sits and fit perfectly. Then help infuse their own aesthetic if they have suggestions on how to make it better. And then also communicate with the client. I find that after I've done my comp, I feel I have presented my aesthetic to the client, and I send that to them, introduce the retoucher, and the whole process start. Now, if they want to move away from that to something that either the client liked better or the aesthetic of the brand, you know, sometimes they have brand colors that need to be incorporated. I find it to be better customer service to have a retoucher who is one step removed from the creative process and takes sort of the baton onwards, can help make that happen easier than myself, who would sit there and say, no, that's not right for the picture. And, you know, when you get married to something, it's easier for me and better customer service to have someone else be a part of those last steps of the process. Pocus, he says, when you're going from location to location to shoot images you need for composites, how do you know what height and angles to keep your tripod at to match up with the angles from the other images? And again, I've answered this, I feel, already, but it really starts with the back plate, the one that's the unmovable part. So if I'm going to shoot a landscape with a person, maybe an oversized letter or some CGI element, I go and shoot the landscape first because I can't change the landscape, but I can change the light and perspective on the person or on the CGI element. Things that's smaller, I can light and move around and shape. A landscape I can't. So often it's the unmovable part is the back landscape, and to that I add a cloud that has the right light source, light perspective. And I know then when I have that background, when I shot it, how high my camera was, what focal length I had, and then it's fairly easy really. You start there and everything else has to fit that. And if you find later that, oh my God, you know, it doesn't fit, then you gotta go back out and shoot it again to make a seamless composite. Or try to tweak it in Photoshop, which is a lifesaver at times, but that's not really the best way to approach it. Purty, P-R-T-T-I, Purty says, do you have any regrets of not doing something? Missed some opportunities maybe? And of course there's missed opportunities, always. And there's always things that I wish I could have done better or different, but I think the important thing is to not dwell on that, but learn from it, right? So if you mess something up, you know that you're not doing that again. So if you learned the lesson, you look forward, right? So yes, there are things that I could have done better or different, or yeah, there's just so many occasions, right? But they're life lessons. They really are. So put those life lessons in your back pocket. Don't dwell on them, but don't forget them, and learn from it and grow from it and become a better photographer. All right, a lot of good questions. We're almost there. Now, Han-Katrin Olsen, she asks, how do you prep your models and how do you talk to them on set to give them to get them to give you the emotions and expressions you want? And man, that's a big one. I really think that's one of the true arts of photography, right? To connect with people in a way where they express something unique to you and to the camera. And as I just mentioned, you know, Avedon is an amazing inspiration in that. If you want to be inspired, actually, there's a CBS story on Avedon that's on YouTube in like 7 to 8 chapters. and it's so inspiring. He really strove to capture emotions and pushed people hard, and he lied to them at times, you know, to get some emotional response that he could photograph. I would do a couple of things. I'm learning this myself, right? It's one of my ambitions in photography too, to connect better with the people I photograph. And I would, two things that I learned. Give a lot of encouragement in the beginning. Don't try to over-direct it. Strike a conversation. Give them a lot of compliments so that they feel comfortable being in front of the camera. Nobody is excited really to have their picture taken. Everyone is a little bit intimidated by the camera, so just make them feel good about themselves, and make them maybe forget the camera and start a conversation. And what I learned is that if I could listen, truly listen, and then offer up some perspective that's honest, you know, not just sort of chat, but also give something that's of meaning to myself back to the sitter, you would get some good, honest response back. Other times it's just to say cheese, for instance. And I kind of love saying that because it's such a paradigm that a photographer like me would just say cheese, but people usually, they recognize that joke and they do smile, and you get some honest expression there. So I would just practice your personal skills. I think it's a lifelong quest, really, to be excellent at capturing that emotion. So that wasn't much advice, but we could be talking for days about the subject of connecting with people, really. Daniel Eckhoff asks, how much hands-on are you in the post-compositing and retouching? How many hours would you say is average amount of post-work applied to each image? So I am fairly hands-on in the image making. I never just hand it off. I always sit with the picture myself, as I explained, assemble all the parts and pieces, and then hand it off to a retoucher. There are retouchers now that I've worked with for quite a while that if I go straight from one assignment to the other and for the lack of sleep can't really do something on my own, that I would send them the pieces, but that have happened maybe 2-3 times in my career. Most of the time I always sit down with the comp, add the feel, add the flavor, so that the picture truly feels like mine. And if I'm on the location and my mind is spinning and I say, what about this piece here and that piece there? The retoucher can't figure that out, or can't just sort of sense what I saw and figure out what I felt. So I feel to sit down on my own is imperative, so that I could put those pieces in, so I could fulfill what I saw in my mind, and then also add the colors and tones, you know, that I feel is reflective of the emotion of the photograph. So yes, I am involved. As for time, it so depends. I think a picture can be finished technically in a day, 7-8 hours, but it's not just that, you know, you gotta retouch a bit and let sort of the post-process unfold itself too. So it's not a 1, 2, 3, it's done. For my personal work, I sit down with it, put in some pieces. This picture I'm working on now, I changed 3 times over 3 days. So you gotta let the picture evolve within you too. It's not just to sit down and get it done. So I'd say on average maybe 7-8 hours, but that is spread over, you know, several days. Andrea Sini, she says, thanks Erik for the opportunity. I've done your course on DVD, fantastic. My question is, when you shoot for a client, how much important is the picture that the client wants? How much important is your personal style? How much important is the vision of the picture you want to realize? And if your vision and the client's is different, question mark. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. Thanks. So yes, I understand what you're talking about. So there's 2 parts to this. And I have, as I mentioned, a fairly distinct style. So clients come to me because they're drawn to that style, yeah. So it's not like I get a job and they want me to do something very different than what I do. Now, all the ideas and the concepts and how we execute their idea is always up for a creative discussion. Now, I would never take it upon myself to say that, you know, the picture that the client wants, how much important is the picture that the client wants? How much important is the vision of the picture you want to realize? And if your vision and the client's is different, question mark. I hope you understand what you're talking about. So there's 2 parts to this. And I have, as I mentioned, a fairly distinct style. So clients come to me because they're drawn to that style, yeah. So it's not like I get a job and they want me to do something very different than what I do. Now, all the ideas and the concepts and how we execute their idea is always up for a creative discussion. Now, I've never your client or your creative is shit and my vision is a lot better. So when you hire me, I'm just going to go and take a picture that I want. I think that's crazy. I hear it happening all the time, but I'm very conscious of me being a commercial photographer, and I'm honored, really, when people come to me and say, Erik, can you take our idea and execute it with your vision? And I do that the best I can. I really try to understand what they want to accomplish, what their brand is, and what they want to say. And I execute their idea and their branding as best as I possibly can. That's my goal with commercial photography. My goal is not to say, thanks for hiring me, give me the money, and I'm going to go and do something else. So it's never about, for commercial photography, it's never about me doing my different thing. I always tell the client what I think should happen, what I think the best solution to their problems are, what the best solution to their concepts are, and how we should do it. But it's always a conversation and a collaboration. It's not one or the other. And if they say, no, this is what we want to do, I say, I'll be a vehicle in your hands and I'll execute your ideas, with my aesthetic. That's the way I feel about advertising photography. Now, I could do it reluctant at times. I could voice my opinion at times, but it truly is an assignment. And I could take the money that I make off of that assignment and create something that's mine on my own time, which I do. So that's the answer to that question. There's not one or the other. I'm grateful to be an advertising photographer, and I most of the time get amazing creative things that I could never come up with myself that people ask me to be a part of, and it's really, really quite extraordinary. Dion Trinidad asks, how can I meet you in person, Erik? It's on my goal list. And I'm really flattered that you would love to meet me. There's people that I would love to meet as well, for sure. I'm crazy busy. As I mentioned earlier, have more than 200 travel days a year. And when I'm not traveling, I try to spend that time, which is really valuable to me, with family and close friends. So I really appreciate the gesture. But for now, I'd like to prioritize, the people that's really close to me. Hannes Schwarzer, she asks, how did you start the career as a professional photographer? The development, first with someone else as a chief and question. Not sure if I quite understand that last part, but how I got really started was assisting. Went to school for 4 years, and then I went into being an assistant photographer for almost 3 years. And I learned a lot about habits and working hard in school and creating pictures, but I feel like I really learned my way around commercial photography as an assistant. And that's how I got started. The first assignments that I got was a hand-me-down from the photographer that I assisted for. So that's how I, saw the world of advertising photography and learned, what it sort of takes when it comes to marketing and staying connected and producing new work, and that whole process that's sort of involved in getting hired. So I learned my ropes there, and then I continued on my own, retouching, just continually marketing myself and creating new work that I entered into competitions. And that's a big thing, actually. If you could get your work showcased in competitions, it's a really good way to be noticed and then get connected to get your career started professionally. So I hope that answered your question there. And it's not sort of like a one-way thing, getting your career started. It's really like doing a lot of different things, new pictures, a little bit of marketing, personal connections, and those three things will sort of blend together for someone to call you up and say, hey, I'd love for you to take these pictures for me. This is a tough name to pronounce, but I think Ikemon asks, how do you learn to pre-visualize how the lights fits on all the composite elements of the image, and how do you get the light to match? And I think I answered this twice now. I think it's a question that keeps coming up, and it's really about knowing, committing to one picture and make sure all the other pictures fit to that one. You can't shoot one over here and one over there and think they're going to match. You got to say, this is my main one, and I'm going to make the one over here fit that. Light, perspective, focal length. That's it. Let me see. Jenny Jacobson, she says, as a Swede, moving to the States seemed like an impossible dream, thinking about getting a green card. Since you are living there, how did you get the opportunity to be living and working in the US? For me, the steps were applying to school, and as long as you get accepted to the school, you would get a visa to study. After you're done studying, you would get a 1-year working visa to work within the field that you studied. So I took advantage of that. During that 1 year, I got a job as a full-time assistant, and when that year was up, the photographer sponsored me to continue that employment. And when I was done with that employment, I got a green card based on my work. Now, it's getting harder and harder and harder to get a green card in the US, but my current assistant got it, and he got a way to come here to the US, to stay here, and to continue to work. So if there's a will, there's a way, is all I can say. Okay, so we're almost done. There's a few questions from this morning. From Yoppie Johannes, he says, Dear Erik, I have watched your DVD carefully, and I want to ask about marketing aspect. Can you give me a little tip? In my country, Indonesia, we have a different atmosphere in photography. Here, wedding photographer got a center focus. I tried to send my portfolio to local magazines, creative agencies, and send 100 portfolio calendars to companies, but no response. I have tried with one island, and the result is quite good. Some of my photos become their photo of the day, and some of them selected to be part of the 2013 book. Can you give me little tips, or maybe another way to market myself? All right, so here's the thing. So from reading this, I get a sense that you have decent work. To be selected for photo of the day is quite an honor at one island, so congratulations on that. With creating good work though, it's not as easy as just sending it out once to get noticed. What if the guys that really like your work has been on vacation for 2 weeks, they come back to a mountain of postcards and letters, and they don't have the time that day to look at yours, and they put it away and they don't look at it again. The key to successful marketing, and I talked about this a lot, really is consistency. You can't do things once and expect a result. Most companies, I mean, they obviously know this, there's a lot of research to it, but they say there should be 7 points of contact before you remember a brand or remember a name. So imagine you have to contact these people that you want to work for, the magazines, the creative agencies, and the companies that you sent your calendar to 7 times. You really will need to make a marketing plan that expands, you know, from 1 time to maybe 2 years. And in those 2 years, you want to contact these people, you know, maybe not 7, but 10 or 12 times. Every other month, send them something. That's really the best advice I could give. It seems like you know who the magazines are. It seems like you know who the creative agencies are and the companies you want to work for are. So just make sure that you have the right contacts, so the people that hire photographers, and then consistently market to those people. Don't do it once, not twice, 7 times or more. And I bet you, with having work as good as getting noticed by one island, these people should by that time notice you and hire you. Marketing is very different in different countries. In Norway, it's a smaller community, and it's way more about going in there and saying hi to the art director and meeting the agency and connecting with them and hiring people that they like to work with. More so, I feel, with the quality of the photography. In the US, the market is so big and it's so specialized that you have to sort of consistently market to the people that hire photographers. So I think though, the idea of being recognized doesn't happen once, but in multitudes. So stay with the program. Don't be discouraged and keep on marketing. All right, so a few from today. Whoa, it says, good compliment on the Toyota picture. How did you do that? And we did it by going to Seattle, outside Seattle, to Olympic National Park, which has this rainforest area, which is so lush and green and beautiful, it's crazy. We were up there for 3 days, travel up, shoot for 3 days and travel back, where we just shot background plates. We shot beautiful trees, we shot beautiful waters, we shot rivers, waterfalls, and then we sat down at my office, me and the art director, and we put together the pieces that we liked the best to create that sort of mystical forest. And then when we built the background, we knew where we sort of wanted the people, and we knew what the light quality was and what was in the foreground. We went to an area similar to that, but not as green and lush, because in California at this time of year it gets a lot browner and drier. We went to sort of a redwood area that had the trees, so we could put the girl in the tree. It had the ferns, so we could put the guy in the fern. It had a river, so we could put the guy in the river. So they really were in the elements. And then we took those elements and people and put them into the background from Washington. So I think that's it. It says, how do you find your locations? That's so amazing. And this one was a combination of internet research, where it was green and lush and mythical, and that ended up being in Washington. So we went there, and then from there we enhanced that sort of myth by taking a river from one place and a tree from another and blending it to create something that we felt was right for that photograph. And I think that's it for the questions. I would just say that I'm really grateful for following me on Facebook. It's really quite amazing actually to get the feedback on the pictures I do that you guys offer. And I guess this is 30,000 thank yous for that time. Hope I answered all the questions as fully as I could, and hopefully we'll do this again maybe at, I don't know, 40,000. So thank you. Cheers.